Thanks for joining me in this episode. We are on day 16 and day 17. It was over 2 days. This is going to be a section about the internal bits now. So we'll be looking at the plans. You'll remember there was a two-section split in the middle, but considering once I've had the walls built, there wasn't as much space inside as I thought there would be. So I'm just going to have a single partition, which we're discussing right now. I'm going to have a little bathroom area. You'll see where the tap is, where that little, they're using like a little temporary heater thing to heat coffee and tea and stuff. Behind there in the ground, there is a spot for the drain pipe to go out from, and that's the far wall here. You can see there's already some hot and cold water there, and the electrical plug unit, which is going to be extended. In this episode, we're going to be doing the plasterboarding, so stay tuned for that. And we decided there's a number of options for this. For the small city garden, I've got this home office that I'm building, and if you followed previous episodes, you'll know there's been a number of different variations and plans. And you'll notice in this episode electrics are being done, so the dry fit, the first fit of the electrics, which is basically the wires going around, and that was okay. They did a decent job of that. Apparently he used to be an electrician earlier life, so he's got a bit of knowledge about this, the builder. And he put the wires in place, and here we are dividing up the home office, small office, into two sections. And it's going to be like a shower room area, bathroom area, like a just, call it an ensuite for an office kind of. And he's basically going into the breeze blocks and digging holes, and those are for the double sockets. One will be a higher one, maybe for a TV on the wall or something, or plasma screen or something. Plasma screen. Do you even get plasma screens anymore? LCD? Yeah, the latest ones, whatever they are. So they've locked off about 1100 millimeters of space wide-wise. So that's nearly 2.5 foot. That's going to be for a shower area. They used a 3x2 to lock that off, basically. And that's what's going to be plasterboarded. There's different types of plasterboard, and there was discussions around what to do. We already have thermolite blocks, which are those big grey blocks that are inside, and they're supposed to be quite good at keeping the the heat. You can get insulated plasterboards. There's moisture resistant plasterboards, even to the extent of acoustic plasterboards, which meant to help like with dampening of sound. You have impact resistant, fire retardant, foil backed plasterboards, and 4-in-1. So these are all different types of plasterboards, which also known as drywall in America. It's like a dry board. It's plaster in the middle, and it's like cardboard on each side, and some of them have specialist material inside to help them be like more resilient to moisture or to fire damage, things like that. If you have a kitchen area or a cooking area, then you need to use fire resistant ones, and that's kind of what I went for the ceiling and that far wall where you might have like a microwave or a kettle. Not really an open flame, but still heat. The boards are a bit thicker basically. You saw there briefly he was drilling into the wall with a hammer drill to create the socket areas, and you'll see the roof's on now. The slates have been put on, and the previous episode you would have seen that. All they're doing now is partitioning away for the internal space, and hopefully in this episode you'll also see the plasterboards going on the wall and how they did that. So they were suggesting a few options. You could have bonding, which is basically like a thick layer of plaster that goes on the wall directly onto the wall, the blocks. But I opted to have dabbing, which is plasterboard adhesive, which sticks the plasterboard to the wall, and then you have a flat surface for which you get skimming on top of. In the next episode you'll see the skimming. Skimming is basically where they go around putting a multi-finish on the drywall. In some countries I've seen they can put tape on the joints and just filler the joints and then like paint directly onto the drywall. That is an option, but because these guys have got the they can plaster. This is not plaster. This is the dab plasterboard adhesive. They put this in dabs on the back of the plasterboard and then stick the plasterboard to the wall. And once that's dried, a couple of hours normally, and you can actually skim on top of it. There's a few different options there. So the benefit of this is if you use it this way, you've got a bit of an air gap between the wall and the plasterboard, as well as the option for having a flat surface for skimming, which would make everything even and nice flat walls. And it gives you an extra layer as well, so like insulation layer. The more layers you have, the better realistically. And you'll see they dab this onto the wall by putting this adhesive in blobs similar to tiles, and then they put the plasterboard on top and use a level, spirit level, just to make sure it's level. So these little things like this are stuff you can think about. Obviously this is a bit more expensive because you're going to be having plasterboards, adhesive and skimming, and then paint on top of that. So yeah, it's something to think about. If you want it to be like a cheaper option, you can go for bonding directly onto the wall, which apparently is meant to be stronger. But I don't know if that's, and bonding is adhesive, isn't it? They call it the same thing, I think. You can check on the description details. I've got an article where I link to a blog post basically supporting this build that I'm doing. So this small office build is got an article where you can check out everything I'm talking about in terms of costs, and I'm slowly building that up. So questions to ask the builders, architects, how much is it costing, all these little things will be broken down there. So make sure to check that out. I might put in a pinned comment or something as well. So you can see the metal cappings on the wall. That's where the wires are going down, and those are good to have to protect the wire in case you ever drill or you have a stud detector. It will it will detect the metal in the wall, which then helps you basically just not hit the screws. Take a guess, how many plasterboards do you think it took to plaster the entire small office? It'll give you an idea of size, because plasterboards are something like 8 foot by 4 foot. That's like a generic size that they come in. So you'll see here, guessing you 3, 6, and like a bit on top, because obviously it's a high ceiling, and they're going to put boards in the ceiling as well, which will be on the bottom of the joist. We've got 2 lighting units, like 2 lights, because it's quite a long narrow section. It gets quite dark. The windows will be coming soon as well, so they can make them airtight and double glazed PVC windows. They're coming in a future episode, and I was quite shocked at how badly they fitted those. And it's just, these builders are kind of making things up as they go along, but I'm assuming they've done a number of these fittings, but considering how they're fitting things, it's just a little bit confusing. Like, for example, I'm sure they've done lots and lots of extensions and they've done lots of plasterboarding, but they still managed to get the sockets wrong. Like, a simple thing like that in terms of the markings of the sockets on the plasterboard. So little things like this are what you'll notice in terms of the builders and how they do these things. But overall, I'll let you watch this small section of the plasterboarding, and then I'll come back to you in a second, give you a bit of music, because it's quite therapeutic watching cowboy builders doing some work. So you can see here, there's basically quite a bit of depth of the walls. You got your outside wall, you got the insulation, you got the inside brick wall, then the adhesive, then the plasterboard, then the skimming. These are some thick walls. It's like Fort Knox in here, but apparently the regulations require you to have the spacings. You'll see now they're starting to put on the ceiling boards, and these are fire resistant, fire retardant boards. They're a bit thicker and they've got a pink layer on them. So now it's starting to come together, and they've got insulation above that as well. So overall, there's quite a few elements of this build. They did not put the insulations all the way down the wall to meet the wall insulation. So the ceiling insulation should meet the wall insulation, so you've got like a nice blanket around the building. But being the cowboys that they are, you'll notice that they missed out quite a few things. And if you're watching my shorts on my channel, you'll see individual shorts about things I'm noticing that were wrong as we're going through this. So you'll see that in the shorts. So I was going to say I'll save it for a separate episode, but there's quite a lot of corner cutting basically by the builders, and I'm putting shorts out so you can see that and see how bad things can get. And this is normal rock wool insulation, 170 millimeters, and they're cutting through the boards, and you'll see there's like 3 boards in the ceiling wide. That's about 4 for 8 foot and then a bit more, so it's quite a lot of space in the end. The camera's up in the corner here, so it looks a bit smaller, but once all the skimming was on, which is you're a couple of days behind, remember, so you'll see that in the future episode. So if you're not already, you can subscribe for the future episodes and check out the previous ones as well to see how we got to this stage. I'm also breaking down the costings, so how much they're using on materials, just so that I've got an idea to see the final payment I'm going to be making for the entire thing, how much they used for labor and how much for equipment. Because what tends to happen is normally whatever the equipment costs, double that, and that's normally what the labor tends to be. In like a rule of thumb, is that's how they normally work these things. So overall, they've got a few little sections that they're covering up with the boards, and then there's going to be, this is the important part. So this is the important part because they need to make sure it's all level and flat, because then they will seem, there's normally like plasterboard tape, it's like a bandage type thing. They stick that on the joint, so when they skim it with plaster, then it holds all the boards together. And you will notice that the skimming takes a bit of time to dry, so you'll need a few days for that to dry. They're using plasterboard screws and screwing straight into the beams in the ceilings to hold the boards up, and it's like a slow process here. As things get progressing, I'll come back to you. I'll give you a bit of music. can quickly see there that you quickly put a bit of dabbing behind the board and then push the board in place, and as the board dries it becomes solid. You can see now the tape coming into play now. So if you look at the ceiling, you'll notice it's putting some white bandage tape on the seams, and that basically holds the boards to each other. You know, the little gap that's between the boards, when you plaster it, it shouldn't be noticeable with this tape. And the skimming needs to go on in a couple of layers, and I noticed that when they plastered and skimmed it, maybe, well, definitely they put a really thin layer on, so they're either saving plaster by doing that or whatever, but there's some cost savings going on. It'll be interesting to get your point of view. If you've done any DIY work or any plastering work, what do you rate this? Hopefully this time lapse and videos are giving you an idea of what the process is. What would you have done differently? What could have been better? And how can they improve? Because there were a few things I noticed. If you keep an eye out on shorts, I'll be putting little shorts out about little things that I noticed. Like, for example, they had to cut the little sections out for the sockets. They left a little hatch to access the roof area, and just these little things where it seemed like the joints were good. When the skimming goes on, it's just a bit disappointing having a really thin layer, because obviously they're saving money by using less plaster. They're smooth walls, but I was able to see where the tape was. Like, for example, the joints, you'll see in the next episode what I mean, but a bit of effort was taken up by that hatch, because obviously they had to plasterboard the inside of the hatch, and they're using fire retardant boards, which is why they're pink. And they also had this metal beading that they had to put around the corners, just to give it like a nice corner on the edge. And there's going to be some more work going on here as well, because they're going to be skimming on the next day. And there's also some boards to go in the washing area, like I'm calling it kitchen, but washing area as in the bathroom, I'll call it. It really is not a bath in there, so shower room, shower, sink, toilet, like a basic setup. There was over a couple of days, so let's have a look at where they got up to at this point. So you'll notice here this washroom hasn't fully been done yet. One wall's been partitioned, they've got plasterboards on, and this is slowly coming along. You'll notice the plugs, there's 2 plugs, double plugs on each wall. There's a light switch for 2 light bulbs in this location. It's about 6 meters, so every 3 meters there's a light in the ceiling at some point once the wiring goes in. They did the wiring today, they put the blocks in, they put the lighting in. That's all going to lead to a separate circuit board in the corner, which will have its own trigger, and the feed was already from the internal electrics that we already had here, if you remember, and we've got hot and cold water already. And there's little bits where I've started looking at, see that, look where the boxes and look where the cut was. But yeah, these little things like this skimming, these are the metal things they used, and you will see on the next episode more details about the skimming itself. So stay tuned for the next episode, and it'll come up on screen now. I'll see you on that episode.